All right. Let's get this out of the way first. The thoughts, views, and opinions expressed on Tailboard Talks Firefighter podcast are solely those of the speakers, guests, and host, and do not in any way represent the thoughts or views or opinions of any other employer, partnership, or sponsor. The material and information in this podcast is for general information purposes only and should be used at the listener's discretion. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Tailboard Talks Firefighter podcast. My name is Chris from 4th Shift Firefighter, and we're here again in the office. Thanks for coming back. Appreciate you all listening. Let's make it a quick one. Nathan's going to be on his way back from school soon, and let's just get into it, dude. So, a couple quick things, and this is going to let me right in the first thing. It's going to seamless transition into stuff. 4th Frontier, Rescue 1 CBD, and Project Fire Buddies. Those are the three organizations, the three things that I push on this show and in my company, because I like all three of them. I use all three of them. I can't really use Project Fire Buddies. That's weird. But I believe in all three of them. First one is 4th Frontier. It's a heart rate monitoring strap, but it shows you lead to EKG. Second one is Rescue 1 CBD, 0.000 THC, safe for the job. And the third one is Project Fire Buddies. It's a thing here in Illinois, and it's basically the most simplistic way I can describe it is it's a Illinois-based Make-A-Wish for kids that are terminally ill. Fantastic organization. Go check out all three of those things, and there's discounts on my website, 4th Shift Firefighter, number 4th shiftfirefighter.com for 4th Frontier and Rescue 1 CBD. So check those out. Did you guys hear? Now this is where it blends in, that Athletic Greens is a scam. Did you hear this? I did. I heard it yesterday. I was on YouTube and a video popped up that said Athletic Greens is a scam, and here's how it started. Let me tell you a few things about Athletic Greens. Now I had a guest on, Raina, nutritionist. I had Raina on, I don't know when ago, a couple months ago. And we talked about Athletic Greens, and her big concern was the ingredients and the heavy metal content in Athletic Greens. And there were some anecdotal stories from medical professionals, but not like studies or anything like that, of children being given Athletic Greens as like a supplement because they don't want to eat vegetables, and even humans just consuming Athletic Greens as directed, but their liver levels were just crazy, just way out of whack. And they looked at the heavy metal content and all the other things, and they're like, this is just a really well-marketed, unregulated, potentially dangerous supplement. So it kind of died off, right? And I think you've heard probably less and less Athletic Green commercials in the past 6 months. Feel like the wave kind of peaked and then it fell off a little bit. Well, it turns out the whole thing is a scam. Yes, not in the sense of like they're not going to give you anything. Well, they are giving you nothing. They're charging you a bunch of money for a powder that you put and make a drink out of, a slurry, if you will. Turns out there's not really much in it. There's something called fairy dusting. Fairy dusting? Let me look up here. Fairy dust ingredients, which is basically like, yeah, the stuff they say is good in the right quantities, but they're just sprinkling a tiny bit in there so they can say it contains it. But in the levels that they're giving it to you in, it's got no real value at all. It's just food coloring at that point. So there's fairy dusting. Also, a little unknown story about this thing, and I learned it yesterday. The guy who made the company, I think he's from New Zealand, was basically driven out of New Zealand on criminal charges. He was convicted in New Zealand for like mortgage fraud and fled the country to avoid prosecution, basically, and then set up shop in America. He knew the FDA was not regulating supplements. He had a bunch of investors behind him because he was a schmoozy guy. He had a mortgage fraud company before that, so he knows how to talk. And started the ball rolling. Offered these ridiculous endorsement and incentive deals to creators and to celebrities for promoting it. Like they were saying the amount of reimbursement you got for reading one ad was like 5 times the amount of a traditional marketing ad that you would get per person. So basically it was just this thing built up to make this scummy guy more rich with no real nutritional value. He got a bunch of famous people like Huberman and Rogan, I'm guessing, and other spokesmen who are widely known to say yes. Tim Ferriss, I think, even endorsed it in his book. Turns out to be junk. So just be skeptical of what you're doing out there. There's no magic bullet. There's no magic pill. It's like cliche to say that at this point. It all just comes down to basics, right? If you think about the size of that Athletic Greens packet, that little tiny envelope, and how much mass that takes up, a couple grams of powder, right? And then you think about how much water you need to survive, like a gallon of water a day, and how much food in mass in terms of weight or space that you consume a day. to think that this little tiny packet of nothing is going to outweigh all this stuff or be the difference maker in all this stuff, just logically, it's got some holes in it, right? But then you get to learn about the company, all that stuff, blah, blah, blah. Let's get on to the topic for today. I was asked a question 2 weeks ago when I put up the question box about leading when you're not like quote unquote in charge. And that's just called informal leadership, right? And if you're a Jocko person or read any of the books like that, it's called like decentralized leadership or decentralized command, stuff like that, where basically you're taking on responsibility and showing leadership, even though it's not your position, like your promoted position or your official position, but you have a personality that lends well to that. So you take on responsibility and you do a good job. Okay. And the question was more or less like, well, how do you do that? How do you get into a position where you're an informal leader and leading when you're not in charge? So I wrote down a few things. And the most important thing that it came down to, and this is going to be the crux of the whole deal, is that if you want to lead on the streets, if you want to lead on calls and during incidents and all that stuff, you have to lead in the station first. Like that's number one. If you don't do that, you're very much putting the cart before the horse, and you're not going to have a foundation to actually lead from when times get tough. It sounds oversimplistic and underwhelming, but it's not, because realistically, 3/4 of my job as lieutenant are personnel issues or dealing with people or simply asking people to do things that they're most likely going to do anyways, but I got to ask them to do them because it's the time to do them, or they need to be done, or they weren't done, or yesterday didn't do it, obviously, so it's our responsibility today. So most of my job is not fireground tasks. Most of my job is communication and quote-unquote leadership skills and management stuff. So that means that your fireground skills or your medic skills or whatever technical task level skills you have only account for about 25% of your leadership ability. So if you're relying on doing a really good job on the street or going to that fire and doing a really good job pulling a hose line or doing a good search or cutting a hole, and that's your top of the mountain, right? That's where you're going to base your leadership on. Just know that best case scenario, that equates to about 25% of your leadership ability and influence. The other 75% is asking people to do stuff that they either weren't going to do or they're going to do it anyways, but now you have to ask them, even though you know they're going to do it or you assume they would in the first place, right? And that's the hard part. That's the part that I not like beware, but be aware to acting officers, new officers, people stepping into the role. The hardest things you'll have to do are not asking someone to pull a hose line or open up a wall or anything like that. The hardest things you're going to have to do is asking the guy with 25 years on to take a blood pressure or to clean the rig because, hey, it's 8 o'clock and it looks kind of junky. Can we just go clean this rig? The mundane tasks, the entry-level stuff, that is so much harder to ask people to do than the extreme stuff or the hero stuff because honestly, do they have to do it? Like, if the bathrooms are dirty when we come on shift, how much dirtier are we going to make them over the course of the day? Not very much, right? So if I have a senior guy on the back step and he's got 20 years on, right? I have a decision to make at noon when I see that the bathrooms haven't been cleaned. I can say, you know what? He's been here for a while. I don't care. They're not that dirty. Tomorrow can deal with it because there's a younger guy coming on tomorrow. Or I can say like, hey, did you hit the bathrooms today? Because yesterday messed them up. You have all these decision points where if I don't do anything, nothing really bad's going to happen. Unlike the fireground where you have to do stuff or else bad stuff's going to happen. But being able to approach people that are senior to you or have more experience in the station than you or don't typically do those things in your mind, you feel awkward asking them to do that. That's the hard part of informal leadership. So if you can master that, before you become a promoted officer or before you expect to be looked to or respected or relied on in the fireground, that's the stuff that'll count. Because if, as an officer, the greatest gift is when one of my two guys comes to me in the day and is like, hey, I'm going to take so-and-so out for some pump training because he's going through his engineer stuff and I'm just going to take him out and we're going to hook up to a hydrant and flow a couple lines. And I say, oh, that's awesome. Do you need me for anything? Like, do you need me to come out there? And he's like, no, we got it. But if you want to come out, sure. That's great, but don't worry about it if you got stuff to do. That's like the best gift. That instills so much happiness for me because you're taking care of training for the day.
at least part of it, right? I don't need to babysit you. You've taken the initiative. You've seen a gap in the day or a need that needs to be fulfilled, and you're doing it without me even recognizing it or being asked. And I built up, I can trust you guys to do that. I don't have to worry about it. It's like the greatest thing. Or when somebody comes in the morning and says, look at the schedule, there's not much going on, but we do have the forcible entry prop here. Can we do that this afternoon? And I say, yeah, do you want me to make up a few drills for it, or you got it? And they say, no, I did this at the other station the other day, and we did a couple things, so I'd like to show those off. That's like the greatest thing for me, because I get to watch and I get to be part of the crew and I get to do stuff, but it's not like somebody's bringing me a problem and saying, hey, so-and-so has to do pump training today. What do you got for him? I don't know. Hey, we got the forcible entry prop today and I haven't done it yet, so give me some drills to do. That's totally different. The first person is showing me leadership, right? So if I know that I can trust that person, that teaching atmosphere, that teaching environment to take care of what needs to be done, identify problems, it's only natural that during an emergency scene, I'm probably going to do the same thing. If I say, hey, that thing's a problem over there, can you take care of that? That's probably going to happen if I know that day to day they're willing to look at problems and take care of them. If they're a person who avoids problems or just does what I tell them to and never goes out of their way to solve any other problems besides the ones I identify for them, fat chance if I see a problem down the street or in the next unit over or on the second floor and I say, hey, can you go take care of that without me? That's probably just not going to happen, right? So figuring out how to lead in your station is the best way to eventually be leaned on to lead on the street, okay? Another story with this, not a long time ago, probably maybe like 10 years ago, I tried to get on the training division. And 10 years ago, Chris was not right now Chris. 10 years ago, Chris was just an energetic rabble-rouser, having fun, doing his job, probably doing an okay job at it, but just running his mouth more than I do now. Not worried about causing problems because whatever, what problem is that big I can't figure out and we can't get out of together. That kind of thing. Just having a good time, loudmouth, right? I tried to get on the training division, and they said, no. We know your skills are good. Like, there's nothing wrong with your skills. We're not concerned about that. But we don't think that you can, like, portray the training division the way we want you to. We spent a lot of time trying to be really good, and we think you're a liability when you get in front of people because you like to joke around too much. You like to play too rough. You like to run your mouth a little bit. So thanks for your skills, thanks for your interest, but we're not going to trust you to talk to people. Now, on the flip side of that, at that same time, I had been coaching with Kurt at this gym, LGN, for about 5 years. So away from work, I was going and coaching adults who I had no leverage over, who I was asking to do very uncomfortable things, who I was asking to trust me with their personal safety under barbells and doing sprints and all these weights hovering over their face. They trusted me to put them in good positions and get them out of them. And I certainly did play rough. I certainly did run my mouth. I certainly ran those classes the way I like to run classes, a little more contact, okay? But I was able to show proficiency and gain trust and also rein that in to a point where it was like, hey, yeah, I'm joking with you. I'm insulting you a little bit. I'm messing with you, but we're working towards this goal and we're going to make sure you succeed. I had gained that trust outside the department. I gained that trust with Kurt, with the clients, and it was good. Like, not to toot my own horn, I think I was a pretty good coach. But I didn't build that trust with the senior staff at my department. So for them, all they saw was goofball, joke around Chris. They never saw Coach Chris. So people around my blue shirt status at the time were like, don't you coach anyways? Like, you go outside of here and you teach several hours every day or so, right? And I said, yeah. But staff doesn't see that. They just see screw around Chris. So obviously there's a gap there. And I got told by someone, you're really good at giving people things and doing things, but you're really bad at like the relationship side of things in this department. And I was like, well, that sucks. I totally expected to be welcomed in the training division with open arms because I was good at my job. I was energetic. I thought I knew how to talk to people, which I did in the coaching aspect, but it was brought up and shown to me that I did not know how to do that at work. I was not the person that they wanted. I was a liability to the people I worked with, which did not feel great. But it's part of growing up, right? It's part of figuring stuff out. Then over the next 5 or 6 years, I was like, well, I got to change that because I think I want to get promoted. I do want to be considered not a liability. Like, I don't want to be looked at as just break in case of. No, I don't want to be looked at as just break in case of fire guy behind the glass where, yeah, if you need something done on the fire ground, cool, but he's a liability otherwise. That didn't feel good to be told that I was that. So I had to start working on it. So I had to start investing more in the relationships and my communication in the station. And over a long course of time, and arguably to this day, for some people, I still haven't gained that trust. Some people still remember 10 years ago, Chris, and they think that's exactly who I am. There's shades of me in there. Don't get me twisted there. He's still in there for sure. But I've tried to transform that now into like, okay, I'm a professional. I'm an instructor. I'm a coach. I'm a teacher. I'm a lieutenant. I'm here to help. I'm here to push forward. Yes, we're going to play a little rough on the way to the goal, but here's what I'm doing. So I had the skills. I had the firefighting skills in my mind. I had the technical capability, but I lacked the ability to lead in the station. I lacked the ability to have better relationships and good communications with my crew. And because of that, I was considered a liability. I wasn't able to get on the training division, and that hurt. But it made me look at it and start paying attention to like how it's the old, like it's not what you're saying, it's how you're saying it. Start paying attention to how I'm saying things, how I'm addressing conflict, how rough I'm playing with some people, being more understanding and empathetic to some people's opinions, maybe not going the extra step when there's that little brief pause and you're messing with someone, you're like, I could just kick this field goal right now and just this game is over. And just reserving yourself a little bit and just letting them breathe for a second and maybe even walking away and disengaging at that point. I had to learn that, okay? So what I have to tell you, and we're going to keep this one right about here. We're wrapping this one up. What I have to tell you is if you want to be an informal leader, then start leading with the small stuff in your station first. That will eventually grow to be a formal leader, informal leader on the streets, and then formal leader through promotion one day. I promise. But if you're not a good informal leader in the station with the small stuff, and you're not helping out the lieutenant or your officer or whatever with the little things, they're not going to count on you to do the big things. This is separate from the whole conversation of like how you do one thing is how you do everything. Totally separate from that. What I'm talking about is you being able to be trusted to accomplish a task, talk to the public, do the little things at your level, because I'm just doing the little things at my level. Do the little things at your level well and let me trust that you can do them. And then obviously you keep getting more and more and more. And that's what presumably you want. If you want to be an informal leader and eventually a leader, you want more and more and more. Of course, there's a breakover point. I think it's called the Peter Principle. I don't remember. That was on my promotional test 4 years ago or whatever it was, but I'm pretty sure that was it. You keep getting more and more and more until you crack, and that's your limit. But that's it. So take that for what it's worth. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for hanging out. Check out Rescue 1 CBD, Fourth Frontier, Project Fire Buddies. Go on the website, 4th Shift Firefighter, and look at the 4 free PDFs. There's 4 downloadable PDFs for free. It's the Daily Dose, Wellness Ladder, 14-ish, and a Strength Builder template. You can go on there and print it out and then build your own strength workout. There's a template on there to use. So check it out. Print those things out. Post them all over. Send me pictures of you doing them. I'm also going to put up, after last week's episode, a chart. I talked about last week how you have physical or non-physical, and then short duration, long duration. All you got to do is make a big plus sign. On the top of the plus sign, on one column you put physical, and the other column you put non-physical, and then the left side, on the y-axis, you would put short duration, long duration, and you start filling out those 4 quadrants with stuff you can do to get out of your head. Stuff you can do to offset some of the bad stuff, some good stuff, right? And you just fill out those boxes. So now when you got the bad stuff, you just look at your list. You look at your list, you pick out one of the 4 things, one of the 4 quadrants based on what your parameters are. Do I want to do something physical for a little bit, physical for a long bit, non-physical for a little bit, non-physical for a long bit? Thanks for letting me mansplain that to you. Pick one and get out of your head. I'm going to put that chart up there. I got to build it. I send it off to my person, get it back, put it up there, then you can download it. All right, guys, thanks for hanging out. Thanks for listening. Thank you so much for watching on YouTube if that's what you do. Buy me a coffee button still live. Go on the website, go on the show notes page. I've talked enough. Thanks. See you soon. Talk to you. Bye.